just walk on up to the red line. Sneak in. Hey, no peek. No peek. Come on up, everybody. Nice crowd. What a crowd. What a crowd.
Didn't know
You okay there, Jerry? Yes, sir. All righty. Come on up. Come on up. You can come up. So, welcome to the Enterprise. You're standing in the corridor. Again, it's built to scale from the original blueprints. You'll notice the corridor is curved. And that serves two purposes. Number one, in the original series, the main section was round. So they had to give the illusion that they were walking around the ship. For filming, you can't see the end. So you have no idea how far that actually goes down. And you can move your camera at different locations and even turn them around, and you look like your ship, if you will, is bigger than it really is. So, we talked about the fact, how do you know what the measurements are, right? Because they're not on the blueprints. Shapes, locations, that's all on blueprints. So, what you end up doing is you put yourself in the shoes of the people who are, you may want to go that way if you don't. I'm trying to move you along. And there are people in there, so if you want to take some pictures, please do. I mean, if you want to stay for the tour, Nova, that's fine, but you don't have to. This is my photographer. So if you put yourself in the shoes of the people who are building the sets, remember, television was very different. 27 episodes in 27 weeks. And if you need to build something, you need to build it in a hurry. So you don't want to cut things in shapes and different sizes and try to match them up. You want to take what material you can get and you want to just build. So has anybody here ever done any construction? You go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you buy a piece of plywood. What size is plywood?
4x8.
What did that take you, all of a tenth of a second? Does anybody see anything in here that's 4 feet by 8 feet?
Every panel.
Right, 4 by 8, 4 by 8, 4 by 8, 4 by 8, 4 by 8. If you can figure out the dimension of one piece on the blueprint, you can calculate everything else. You can know that the corridor is 8 feet wide. You know that a transporter pad is 18 inches across. So you know all that, and you can build it. Because as I said before, to the eye, if this isn't built right or built to scale, you're going to be concentrating more on the set than you are on the story. Any questions so far? Okay. So there are two differences between what's here and what you would have seen at Paramount. One is the location of engineering, where we started. Engineering would have been down at the other end of the corridor. But they had 50,000 square feet. We have 10,000 square feet. You fight your battles where you can. The second difference would have been in here. So you can see by the plaque on the wall, this would have been Dr. McCoy's office. In the original series, this would have all been the laboratories. And McCoy's office would have been at the end. But if you're building or making a fan film, and you don't have a story that needs Dr. McCoy's office, you don't build it. And actually, this becomes valuable property because you will have to build something eventually. You're peeking. You will have to build something eventually, and if you have no space, then you can't build any additional sets. But, having said that, if you walk inside and make a left, you'll find yourself in sick bay.
Let's walk in.
Let's do it.
And walk all the way to the back.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Believe it or not, it's a Cleon. You know, the things on the wall. Thing coming out of the wall or something. Yeah.
Okay, I want to tell you something cool about this room. So, if anybody's ever read the old book, The Making of Star Trek, all us nerds, right? It talked about, you see memos where, I think it was UCLA Medical Center contacted Star Trek and asked them where they got this idea because they had been researching this technology. It's never come to pass, but you know, they got computer graphics that do this stuff like now for STC and everybody else. But back in the day, this was like a clear little strip that went around the pulley, and you had guys back in the back doing this, moving it. Now, of course, you just slap a
You want to give the
computer on
rest
it.
of the tour?
Huh?
You want to give the rest of the tour?
I don't mind.
Okay.
I just
Got your flashlight?
I was just stepping in since you weren't here, but no, I'll go. But yeah, they want to know where they got the idea for this because UCLA Medical Center was kind of looking into this, and they're like, "Well, this is pretty cool. Where did you get a hold of one of our memos or something?" And they're like, "We just thought it up." Just like so much of the other stuff, you had a lot of clever people trying to come up with something cool and something that actually made sense. Not only was it cool, it all made sense. Everything on Star Trek made sense. Like this is the scanner that reads the person that's here. So it's very cool. So any of you guys that are over there, you can't see this, but you guys can. So from over here, this is the view that you always saw at sickbay, right? You want to take over, Hal? Okay. So you always saw this view here. So just like some of the other rooms all have 4 walls, there's no wall here. And you've already talked about, or did they talk about in engineering how there'd be a wall missing?
Yes.
Okay, so here you can see, this is what you would have seen. It wouldn't have been full of stuff. But I think there was 2 episodes maybe where you saw this other bio bed over here, and they filmed it from over here. Well, they have the walls, they just roll it into place and make that shot, but primarily this is what you saw. Beautiful room. Let's see, what else is interesting about this
You have
room?
your camera?
I do.
With your
Oh,
flashlight?
yes.
So I'll do this and then you're taking over.
Okay.
So this material, which you saw everywhere in Star Trek, even in different colors, is one of those things that's no longer available. This has been out of production for decades. Vic worked with a textile manufacturer to try to get this original look back. The original thing they found in the first episode or 2 is what's inside the cryo tube, which is kind of an orange gold. It's dull, but what made this so interesting from the original series is when you film this under light and camera, you can see what this looks like. You can see the shine, the shimmer, sparkle, right?
Yeah.
You can see that. And by the way, even though we said, please don't lay on the bed, you're certainly welcome to run your hand across it, feel what it is. So at this point in the walkthrough, I usually have a trivia question. And the trivia question is, in the original series, male crewman, what color were their pants?
Black?
Black, black, black. Male crewman. Black. Take a look over here, whoever you can. I'm going to get behind you so we can get some other people. Take a look. What do you see? Those are original TOS pants. Sparkles. So it's our theory that back then, the production people thought the future was sparkly.
Shiny, sparkly.
Can't come up with another reason that we know of. You taking over there? Did
I
you
will.
introduce yourself?
I did. My name is Skip. I'm a, I don't know, volunteer here. I come and help out when I can. This is my favorite place in the world to be. And
He's been in a number of fan films himself.
I've seen
helped
He's gonna
build
be-
a lot of things.
He's going to be in one that we're filming next week, and he's going to be in one that we're filming 2 or so weeks after that.
Yep.
So he's, you know, I thought he was a guy that just walked off the street, but
I get that at home too.
yeah, I'm sure. But I'm going to let Skip take you a couple of ways down. I've got just a couple of things to take care of.
Okay.
And then I'm going to see where you are, and if you need me, you know, if I see people sitting on you, then I know.
Or fading out, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And then at some point, Vic will cycle back and catch up with us. Something interesting. Okay, everybody's seen STC, right? You remember when Kirk and Spock got into a fight in sick bay? So if you look real closely, you see the smudge right here on the wall. That's some makeup from Vic's face. Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions about sick bay? Okay. You guys ready to move on? We're going to go to one of my favorite rooms now.
Is that what they said?
I got $20.
Everybody come on in.
Right here?
Everybody in? Is this all of us? Okay. So, this is one of my favorite rooms. What do you think about the pink wall? First and second season of Star Trek, these were all gray. And Star Trek, you know, color TVs were brand new back then, right? So everybody wanted to show off what they could do. That's why they had the yellow, the red, what was the other one? Blue, the blue uniforms. You had colored gels lighting all over the walls in the corridor, which if it were a real ship, you wouldn't have colored lights in a corridor. It would be just a functional, regular lighting, right? Third season, they thought, well, let's just paint the walls. That'll save us on having to gel the lights and all that stuff. And it just gives it an interesting look. This, however, is cool. So, the coolest thing about the transporter room. So, I don't know if they talked about the model, but the model that they filmed Star Trek with was like 11 feet long. Big thing. The ship. So what you do is, you know, every time that they had to do an episode, they didn't get the model out and go film it. At the beginning of the season, they set it up, and everybody knows that the camera moved, not the model. Does everybody know that? Okay. So they set it up, they think of all the possible shots they need, and they film all those. And then they superimpose it, and then they have all the ship. Well, so they're writing their stories, and they're like, you know, everything you do with the model is going to cost money. And everything was about money, right? Everything was about saving money, using what you have. They thought, man, we can't land this ship. It's one thing to show it going through space, but it's more special effects if you're going to have to put a planet behind it, and you know, who knows, dust flying up. Like, we gotta think of something else. And they thought, well, they have the shuttlecraft, but then you've got to like spend some time where people got to fly, whatever. And well, we got to hurry up and get there. So somebody came up with the idea, why don't we just take them apart, shoot them through space somewhere, and have them materialize somewhere. And you know, teleporting thing had been around in science fiction since what, 50s, 40s, who knows what, but not really ever thought out. Just mentioned, we teleported here. So these guys, just like sickbay, they thought kind of what makes sense. You have this room, you know, buzzing with power, focusing beams, and a guy running the thing way over here, kind of like an X-ray machine where they go into the other room like a coward and do the thing while you're getting all the X-rays. And so they came up with this concept that you get into this chamber and it harnessed all these energies and it sent you somewhere. And now we can move the story along and get our guys there just like that. And it was just some guys coming up with a way to save a buck. And now, who doesn't know on the planet, who doesn't know what beam me up means? Isn't that so cool? Just some guys solving a problem, saving a buck. And it's so iconic. It's one of the most iconic things like in history that you can think of. Beam me up. Now, we talked about, or they talked about using what was around. You know, and they may have mentioned in engineering, you know, back in the day, you had westerns. Well, you got horses everywhere, you got dirt everywhere, you got grass everywhere, you got guns, hats, everybody's got cowboy hats. Cop shows, everybody, there's normal towns, normal cars, whatever. Space, you don't have all that stuff. You got to come up with all of it. Well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, you don't want to build anything that you don't have to, but you want stuff to look cool. So, what do you think these are?
Fresnel lenses.
Okay, somebody already knew that. It's called Fresnel lenses. It's for movie cameras, the big movie lights. Look at that one up there. It's hard to look into it, but it's the same thing, but small. So these cost, I don't know how much these cost. They cost a lot. So building this place, we had the same constraints. We need to save a buck, right? So what we did is we took a real one, poured resin in it, or well, molded it, and then now we have this mold, and poured clear resin in it, and made all these. One breaks, we pour a new one, make a new one. They're a little rough for all the years of, you know, wear and tear, people stepping on them, getting glued down and all that stuff, but
how often do you shoot a close up on
how often do you look at the floor? And if you're, even if you just see it on the screen, if you're looking at the floor, you're not paying attention to the story, are you? And everything's about the story. Did Ray mention the sets? The reason the sets have to be so perfect, I don't know if he went into this or not, but it's so you can immediately forget it. Now I give you permission to tell me a story. I'm not looking at that wall and going, was that there? Was that there? I don't know. I don't know. I questioned this wall one time, and I had to go back and look at the show, and I'm like, yeah, that was built just like that. I'm gonna tell you a funny story about the transporter before we move on. A couple of years ago, we were in here doing some work, and I was cleaning these up, and somebody along the way put these little silicone little feet like you would put under the glass on a coffee table or something, under all these, and it raised them up a little bit. We didn't like it, so I was cleaning up all the pads, we were touching up the paint, and I was in here for about 3 hours that day. It was just Vic and I. We'd had a fan weekend, and we had a production to shoot the next week, so I can't afford to go home. Huh? I couldn't afford to go home. So it was just easier to stay here. And we just worked for 3 days, touching stuff up so everything would look nice. So I was in here working, cleaning up all these, and these little rubber feet. Set them over here. There was like 5 on each pad. I would just set them over here. Touching up the paint, fixing the little rings. The day was done. It's time to go home. I go back to my hotel, down the street. I just left this room. It took me 5 minutes to get to my room. Changing clothes, getting ready to go eat. Turned on the TV, Star Trek was on. And whatever show was on, when the picture came on, it was a view of this. And my eyes went right here. And those things weren't here. They were gone. Of course they were gone. I'm watching real Star Trek now. But it was the weirdest thing ever. I mean, as weird as y'all think walking into this building is, I spent 3 or 4 hours straight in that room. I left this room and I went to my hotel and saw this room. It was just the oddest thing. Any questions about the trip? Oh, what wall would be gone? What wall would never be here? Why?
Camera stuff.
Because you got to get the camera. You got to see the whole room. You can't see the whole room if you're in the room. That's the wall that would be gone. And if you look on the blueprints, there's a little thing drawn around that back wall. Another interesting thing is depending on which blueprint you look on, this transporter will be here. It'll be back there at an angle. Many times when they filmed, it probably wasn't even here. But they set it wherever they needed to set it. You do what is going to look good on the camera. It doesn't matter. They didn't know that 50 years from now, picky people like Star Trek fans, like this far apart, so that they come into the picture at the bottom of the view screen. Then there's the view screen angle where it's over from Captain Kirk, and you see Sulu and Chekhov sitting there. The railings are in their normal places, but when it shows the close-up of the view screen, they move the railings in. And then early on, there's some bridge shots, like just say this is the helm and navigation. There's shots taken like from this angle, and they've taken this railing here and like moved it over. So it's in front just because it's something visual. It makes it look good on camera. So it was all about what's going to look good. It's not really about what's real. It's going to look good. They did the same thing in here. They moved walls, put lights wherever. When we film, all these lights aren't on. We'll take all these lights, put them in one room, just for what we need. The rest of the set looks like crap. Well, it never looks like crap. Even in the dark, it's beautiful, but you get the idea. Any other questions about the transporter room?
Do they ever paint the walls green?
We never painted them green.
Camera don't see it, but
That's true. Of course, I guess with the when you do the chroma key, I guess you could switch colors, but yeah, no, because then we'd be invisible, right?
There's lots of reasons.
We had the issue when we had the green girl. So, and then we couldn't do blue screen because Spock had a blue shirt. So they figured that out eventually. Any other transporter room questions? Ready to move on?
Can you beam us over to the next
We'll get.
set?
Well, we have to do it the hard way. We have to actually walk. So okay, come on out.
I like that material.
One of these sets was a multi-use set. We call it redressing the roof, right? Before we go in, everybody come here with the door so you can see this.
That's right there.
What is it?
That's fine.
Everybody around here where they can see? I need everybody where they can see the door. Is that all of you? Okay, so what does the sign say? What does that imply? But what does that imply?
Is there a briefing room one?
At least one more. At least one more. Could be 10 more. The ship's 948 feet long, has 26 floors on it. Probably lots of different departments have to have conferences from time to time. Briefing room 2. Transporter. Did you notice what that sign said? Transporter section. It said transporter room. Now on the old blueprints, I think they had, I forgot how many they had drawn on that. Not that was ever mentioned in Star Trek how many there were, but the sign did say transporter section. It didn't say transporter room. Briefing room had numbers on it. So come on in here. And then just come on in and fill in around the room. Interesting things about this room also.
Why did you call this here?
Pardon me?
Why did you call this here?
There's something important going on in the neutral zone.
It's a ragtag crew.
Is this everybody? You guys the last? Okay. One of the interesting things about this room, again, if you look on old blueprints, you'll see this table all over the place. The table was here. Sometimes it was turned completely around. It's just whatever. They may have cleaned the set before filming that week, and the director said, you know what, I want it facing this way because I want the guy at the computer to be down here. It's just whatever they wanted. There's no set way to do the room. It can be decorated however they want it. Which wall would not be here in this room, if you remember the show?
One end or the other.
One end or the other. Typically it was going to be this one though. In that one, remember I talked about there was often a door? In the early seasons, especially, you could see that door from the transporter room. Remember when they had the wedding that got interrupted in Star Trek?
Yep.
That was in this room, the chapel. They put the door over there. I think they just made that into a regular wall. They just slid a wall into place. That's where they did the thing where Kirk stood and did the ceremony, and they had the bleachers over here. This was also the rec room, you know, with the tables, the three-dimensional chess. They just rolled those Brady Bunch tables in, the chairs. Oh, notice there's no chairs in here. Do you know why?
Got the bridge.
Why?
It's costly. That's all they have.
Right. We don't need them in here and on the bridge. You need them where you film.
And when we make this a rec room, we actually have a food processor panel that we can put up on that wall. It doesn't do anything. It's just 3 yellow doors and a bunch of buttons, but you can fake it when you're there. And then think about a certain court martial. What was at that end of the room?
View screen.
The view screen.
which we have too. Which you'll see that. I wish we'd set up that food processor, like maybe just set it somewhere where it's visible.
I don't know where it is.
I do.
I don't know where it is.
It's back behind.
It's behind something, I'm
It's
sure.
behind, it is behind something.
We
heavy.
have little nooks and crannies
behind
these
something
walls
heavy.
to store stuff.
All these stations, again, they thought out. The guys were creative. They thought out what would be needed in a place like this. You got to have somebody running your multimedia. You got to have your view screen. You got to have ways for people to talk to each other, like a regular conference room. You know, they have the little things with the microphones. Today's conference room, same thing. Now, everybody knows what rocker switches are, right? On Star Trek. We have several that when we built this place, they don't work. That's the thing. Not in this room. They used to be available everywhere. Radio Shack, you know, even when I was a kid, you could still buy, when I was in high school, you could still buy rocker switches. They're hard to find now. So we have several in different places. The engineering console in there has some. The bridge has the most of them. But so what we did is took them, okay, I can't get the rest of them. Just made little molds of them. And the cool thing is you can turn it one way or the other, so if the buttons go in one way or the other. And it doesn't matter. It looks like a button. You didn't, I mean, how many people knew that before I said it? That they're not real. And here's the thing. You're watching the show, you're like, well, those aren't real. They don't really move. Okay, you're watching the show and then Kirk here. Yeah, did I push this button?
Looks like it.
I don't know. You don't know. And also, if I'm doing a decent job, you're looking here. You're not looking at my finger unless it's one of those close-ups where a guy fires a phaser. But the sound guy then puts in that, and it sells it. It doesn't need to be real. It doesn't need to be real. Talking about using what you had, this is from I don't remember what model, a guitar amplifier speaker. That's what all the mesh was in all the speakers, grills. This is from Guitar Amp. This stuff's pretty damn close to what they originally had. For all I know, it may be from the same models. I don't know. I'm not a guitar guy, so I don't know that stuff.
How long did it take you to build this situation?
Off and on, it took, I don't know, a year or so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. There was a lot of people.
All volunteers.
A lot of people involved. Yeah. So she would have become the Invisible Woman. They couldn't have Spock in the scene because they had to do blue screen. So the guy that was in the scene had a red shirt and didn't die, amazingly enough. But they just put a drape behind it, filmed it, and then CGI'd in the shuttle bay behind it, which was really cool. This is the Jeffries tube. We talked about Matt Jeffries. This is what became in the Next Generation years, and I think at some point in fandom, the word Jeffries tube came out. It was just never used on Star Trek until Next Generation came out. But you know, you've all seen the classic shots of Scotty climbing up in here and doing stuff. Remember the one where he had to reach his tool thing in and all those lightning?
The static
You know how they did that?
electricity and
You
stuff.
know how they did that? They had a guy, they didn't animate it. They had a guy on the film with a little needle scratching the emulsion off the negative. And every frame was different, so of course it was jumping around. That's how they made the lightning.
That's cool.
Remember when Apollo shot Kirk with the lightning?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Well,
That
guys,
was super
Film
cool.
days.
Film days. But
Yeah.
you do what works. Not everything has to have a high-tech solution. And why go high-tech if you can have a guy scratch something? Now, I don't know how long that took, but I'm sure the guy's already on salary anyway, right? Better than having a special effect guy CG, well, they could do that, could they? They could have.
Well, they could key.
Sure.
Key overshot, mix.
They could. There's a lot they could do. You gotta save money. You gotta save money. So everybody come in here and look up here. Look at all that equipment in there. Look at how everything's labeled in here. In particular, I want you to notice how, where is it? It's on the left. Here we go, on the left. And if you already knew this, don't say it. But I want people that don't know to guess. What does this labeling stand? GNDN. It's some kind of conduit
I
that
heard it.
helps something do something, probably, right? Any guesses? No, I'm just going to tell you, because if you don't know. Huh? Goes nowhere, does nothing. GNDN. GND and conduit. And they're labeled on there. And a lot of these in engineering, that big wall in engineering, where all the, not the main thing, but the main bank in engineering, you see initials all over it. Star Trek continues, people's initials. And I'm sure it was that way on regular Star Trek. These are only single letters, probably aren't, but anytime you saw something like that, that's what it was, just guys playing around with it, they'll never be seen. They came here, they used those uniforms, after something that was done. They came out of the process. I'll be dead out of date. It's one of the original index constitution. It's supported by a lot of ways, there's an inner platform at the top, we're filling down in. I didn't put it together.
USS Constitution. This is Commander Michael Burnham from the USS Scott. Yes. How many pieces?
Yes. That's exactly what it is. It's got an angle.
Be here.
I mean, it's solid.
We must direct the in our pod workshop.
That's what we do. They build a camera platform up there, shine some lights down there, and have a guy do stuff with tools. A lot of power in there. If you guys want to cycle through here and just look, and you can see the back of what the Jeffries tube looks like. Don't want to do that before we step into the other area. Go look at the Jeffries tube. Oh no. That's the turbo lift. More of that drum material on the wall there. And remember in the show they have the lights going by, even the sideways lights. Yeah. Showed the elevator move sideways. One thing I was going to mention that I forgot to earlier that has nothing to do with it. There's a book called Designing the Future, how mid-century modern shaped a TV series or something like that. Designing the Future. And it's a book about the decor used on Star Trek. It's all called mid-century modern. I'm not a decor person, but now I know that term. But the chairs, the plants, the different things on the wall, and it goes through it's a thick book, but it's fascinating. It'll show a plant that's or a fake plant that's in the background. It'll show a shot from the show, and then it'll show a shot of the product, tell you what that product was. Some wall art. It'll show that in the show, and then it'll, again, a regular picture of it, and tell what the product actually is. The chair, it'll have the Burt chairs in there. The captain's chair, which we'll talk about. It was just a regular office chair called a Madison office chair. Madison executive office chair. They just chopped the legs off, built a nice cool cradle with some buttons on it, and that's a captain's chair. It was just an office chair that was available, and frankly, it probably wasn't even that comfortable. But it was what was available. But it's a cool book. If you ever get around to someplace where you can look at it, check that book out. It's really neat. And if you want to decorate, that's your go-to thing for how to decorate. Okay, you want to?
No, you're doing great.
Oh, okay.
I just want to listen to you talk.
Okay, so come on in around here a little bit. Everybody remembers this, right? Now on the original set, like a lot of sets were built elevated, so you could have whether it's a power or different things you needed to do. This ladder went down because there were scenes where you could see people coming up the ladder. Now this probably only went down, 3 feet maybe, but you see guys going up in several different episodes. Most of the older episodes. And who knows where it goes and what it does, but it's just another Jeffrey's light tube of some kind. Remember the brig? This is our brig, and this is where it was on the show. Speaking of where it was on the show, remember we talked about the two differences in the building, right? Engineering control room. We're not fixing to walk into engineering. But on the show, this is where engineering was, but it was actually built here. So when we're filming, you show a guy walk around the corner, you have somebody say doors. You have a green screen in here, and the door's open, and they hit your door for as much of it as you need to see them going into the engineering room, or they may just approach the door. You may not even see it open. And then cut, you put the camera inside engineering, the door's open, they walk into engineering. Mr. Scott, blah, 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 or whatever. Completely other side of the building. You just put them together, show a guy walking here, show a guy walking here, who knows what happens in between. But that's what we had to do with our limitation of space. But this sells it, because this is where it was originally. And the brig was right here. Now, in the blueprints, maybe it wasn't really supposed to be. Why would it be next to engineering? This is where it was on the set. One of those cool things, like sick bay and the transporter room, that they came up with was, okay, how are we going to hold guys in here? What's gonna do? Bars? We're probably beyond bars by now. Probably a force field, which serves two purposes. A, it's futuristic, but what else? What else? Huh? It's cheap. Okay, three purposes. It's cheap because you don't actually have to build it because it's a force field, and you can't build one of those. But what else? There's nothing obstructing the actors. Whatever you want to do to tell your story is unobstructed by bars. Now, you can't have the guy doing this, but you can have a guy going like this and adding in a little you know, you can tell, depending on what you want your drama to be, but you don't have bars, and you didn't have to build anything. They just put this thing around it, put some lights back here, turn them on, it looks like, ooh, I better not touch that. Pretty cool. So I'm sure there's quite a few of you ladies who would like to your guys in the brig. So I know I've spent some time in here. Any questions before we move into the pretty boring part of the tour? None? Are we ready? Okay, sir, I'm going to let you please stand if you'll give me 1 second. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, come on in. Come on in, turn it, and go all the way in, please. It's not TV, you really can walk in. Is your heart going to stop? Go all the way in.
Get in there.
Come on in. Oh, what does this room have that the other ones didn't?
Chairs.
Chairs. Here's where they all are. And do you notice there are exactly how many there need to be, and no more? Well, we really could use one more in engineering in that section, but we got the captain's chair, but that's it. You're only going to film one room at a time, so we just pick them up, carry them into the other room. We got plenty of guys that want to help. So that's what we do. We just all march down the hall with chairs and lights and go light up the other room. What do y'all think?
This is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
I dig this thing. How you doing, Cap?
Remember we were talking about, I was talking about what looks good in camera. What story the director wants to tell, what he wants you to see. Remember we were talking about this railing? Y'all remember me saying that about this? This is the one that would move. If you saw this view of the view screen, they would take these and they look like they're about this far apart. Because it's just something, and it's just not that. It's just something extra that shows up on the screen. And then when they showed a view from over here, a lot of times, This is like moved in, and it's like it's right here. But again, it's just something to break up the shot, something to look like there's more in the room. Depends on what the director wants you to see.
You gotta hang on to something.
You got to hang on to something. This is the Madison Executive Office chair. Just had little, 4 little legs. It wasn't a big chair.
Nice chair.
For Star Trek Continues, it was an actual. This is somebody built this. For Star Trek Continues, it was an actual Madison office chair, which it's in Vic's house. He has his captain's chair.
I stole it.
He did. So these buttons don't work, so don't push them. His work, you push the button, it lights up. But when he turned over the sets to Ray, he said, "I'm keeping my chair because it's my chair." Which, who can blame him? I mean, if you have a chance to keep your captain's chair, you're going to keep your chair, right? Anybody, come on, you guys feel free to sit and hop up in the chair. One thing we didn't have is this view screen wall. We didn't have this till, was it last year or last year?
Just about 2 years now.
Something like that. So for everything on Star Trek Continues, this was all CGI. Some guy went in the computer and made it. On Star Trek, it was really here, but they would move it out of the way. Remember we talked about wild walls and moving things out of the way? Is this me? Oh, that is me.
This is the only place you can go where you'll hear that ringtone from 5 different phones.
Yeah.
Anywhere else on the planet, you're the only one with a communicated ringtone.
Yeah.
You come down here and we all check our
We all go to dinner where all our phones come out.
I'm so sorry I missed a lot of your tour. I was grabbing lunch. But Skip did an awesome job, I'm sure.
You did.
How many of you have seen Star Trek Continues? A good portion. Oh, good! Thank you. Finally. So many people are like, never heard it. I'm honored that you guys are here. We love sharing this with people that enjoy it. We often say, apart from building it and then shooting our series here, there is nothing that gives us more joy than opening it up for people to enjoy as well. If you have any questions for me, I wanted to make sure and say hi to everybody. I don't normally wear a uniform when I do this.
I like it.
I don't know what got into me today. It's been 5 years since I wore this uniform on these sets, and it's in my hotel room today, really going back and forth. Don't do it. Don't do it. But I want to do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm glad you did.
Mirror Kurt said, do it.
Yeah, right. Does anyone have any questions, either about our series or about the sets? I mean, Skip joined us just a few years back, but I've kind of been here since the beginning. This building was just a slab of concrete when I rented it, and we built all this and shot our series here. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Have you all made any money on your films?
Nope, and I'm not allowed to either.
What made you do it?
Pardon me?
What made you do it?
Love. I'm going to tell you an interesting story. In our world, in our increasingly cynical, troubled world, it seems like so few people ever pursue something purely for the passion of it. I lived in Los Angeles for several years. Don't hold that against me. I couldn't wait to get out of there. But while I lived there, I was shooting our series. And I do a lot of voice work professionally, like animation, video game voice work. So I would go into studios in LA to record shows that I was a part of. And we were shooting Star Trek Continues, and I would go in and I would say, "Oh, look, we just shot this weekend. Look at these pictures." And the directors and the producers at these studios would say, "So how are you making money from this?" And I would say, like a 12-year-old, "We're not." Why? And they would look at me with the biggest troubled look on their face and say, "Then why are you doing it?" Because they can't even conceive of why you would put your effort and your blood and your passion and your sweat and your love and your talent into something.
And your money.
Yeah, and your money. Into something that's not going to yield money. Well, you know what? There's some things greater than money. And you guys just walked through it. You couldn't put a price tag on what you understand that, right? And it was free. And at the same time, it was priceless. How cool is that? how many things about can you say that about in this world? That they're priceless, and yet it was free. So I did this because when I was a little boy, I fell in love with this show, and it inspired me to do a lot of things that I do professionally now, whether it's acting or filmmaking, building sets, making props, all that kind of stuff. I started doing those things because I was so excited about Star Trek. I'd come home every day and lay on the floor in our living room and watch it on a 19-inch black and white television. And 40 plus years later, I decided I wanted to pay tribute to that show, and I knew there were a lot of people out there just like me who would love to do that. And so I brought them together, we built these sets. We shot one episode, never imagining how well it would be received, if at all. And it was well received, and so I had funded the first episode myself. I flew everybody down here, I bought them hotel rooms, I paid for their food every day, I rented the camera gear, I paid to rent this building, paid to build to build these sets, but it was all because I loved Star Trek. And even got the chance to tell Bill Shatner. He and I had become friends over the years doing Comic-Cons together, but he didn't know anything about any of this, and I wasn't about to tell him. But when he did find out, I told him that it was to pay tribute, and it was to honor him and Leonard Nimoy and Roddenberry and everybody that created that show that so many people loved when they were young. I was sitting at dinner with him, and I told him about it, and I put my arm around his shoulder and I said, this was all for you guys. And he put his arm around my shoulder and he went, that's extraordinary. So, you're kind of standing in a dream. Any questions? Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
So internationally, how's this going? This set? People using it from all over the world?
At least 40 different fan productions have shot here. Imagine how many people would love to shoot a Star Trek fan production, but they don't have the money to build sets or to rent a place to build sets. Here they are. They're already done. So all you need to do is just write a story, get a bunch of people together, and come and make something. The people that we built this, but now Neutral Zone, the people that own it now, they just want people to enjoy it. Nobody's interested in making any money. It goes beyond that. It's just for love of Star Trek and love of, and it's more than even Star Trek. It's what Star Trek represents. You know, it's the nostalgia. It's that childhood, wide-eyed imagination and nostalgia that we remember. Those of you that are my age or near it, remember how we felt when we watched that show.
Well, that's amazing. It really is.
Thank you. It's a beautiful thing. It is. It's a beautiful thing, and it's really fun to share it with people. My favorite thing is, you know how when you see a good movie, and you love this movie, you went to this movie and you loved it so much, and you want to take a friend, and you can't wait for your friend to see the movie, right? So you go to the theater, and your friend watches the movie, and you watch your friend. Because you just can't wait for them to enjoy what you know is coming.
That's
right?
what we do when you guys come around this corner.
Exactly.
All
we
of
just
us,
like watching you
all of us watch
this. Yeah, exactly. Any other questions at all?
Well, before you turn loose, if nobody has any questions, I have a couple last things I want to wrap up about the bridge set. A couple of things from old Star Trek TV. We talked about the view screen not being there most of the time because, again, that's the wall that wouldn't be here, or this one. But when you see Kirk, Chekhov, Sulu, and the bridge, they're out there. And that's what STC was. This wall wasn't here. They never had a view screen wall. This wasn't built till 2 years ago. Y'all finished in 2017. But a couple of things about when you do see the view screen. Remember we talked about when they filmed the model of the Enterprise, they just set it up, did this view, had the camera go this way, had the camera do everything they needed to. Same thing with the view screen. They have the shot where you see Kirk sitting here and it's over his shoulder. And you can see Sulu and Chekhov, you can see the view screen. Then they have the shot where it's just these two guys in the view screen, and you see Sulu turn back and look at the captain. Doesn't matter what season it is. You see that in season 3 when they have this kind of uniform. It's velour shirted Sulu that turns around and does this. Just for a second. Sometimes it's Chekhov sitting here, but then they show another scene and it's another guy. You see a wide shot, it's some other guy sitting here, and it goes back to the scene and it's Chekhov. Wasn't there one where it was a guy with a different color? Maybe? Different colors, you see an arm do this, you only see it for a second. Well, they just put stuff together because, again, 50 years later, who's gonna know?
Yeah.
Okay, see how this is built in pie sections? That's how the real set was. These things were all movable. You move them as needed. There were only a couple of scenes where you saw this side of the bridge in the whole series. A couple. A lot of times, this section wasn't even here. There are some scenes where, remember we had the little view hole in the captain's room? So you can get behind the wall and still see him. Well, there's shots where Spock is like this, but they're filming from over here. So this section is gone because they're wanting to see Spock as he's looking into his thing. But there's a couple of scenes where his hand, oops, sorry, his hand is over here, but on his station, because they're filming from behind it, and his hand is off the bridge. Because remember, there's another section there, but Leonard Nimoy's hand was over here while he was looking into his viewer. How funny is that? Just a lot of those, that's real life movie making, you know, these are just humans on, you know, it's not a spaceship. They're just acting, and you're in your moment, and you're not going to remember where your hand is all the time.
And if you watch them close enough, occasionally you would even see some raw, unpainted plywood down in the corner. They just missed it, you know, they were having to shoot so fast, they had such a schedule to keep, and they're like, hey, he got his lines right, was the camera in focus, we're moving on. Like, they didn't have time to, oh, maybe we should repaint this. Well, I think I saw a little bit of that. There are plenty of scenes where they're walking around here and you can see the shadow of the lights up at the top of the frame. Because that's not the point. The point was the story. The story's the most important thing. So they missed a lot of fun things like that. But like Skip said, when they were making it, they never imagined that nerds like us would be tearing it apart.
Spock's hand's outside the bridge!
Frame by frame.
And now when we go back and look at any of this, we're going to look for all those little guys.
You will never watch the original series the same way again. Because now that you've walked through the footprint of the sets, you'll know exactly where they were, you're going to know where everything is, and you'll start noticing things that you might have never noticed before.
Or you'll see something that looks like it's in a different part of the ship, but you'll know now that they just changed something around. You'll go, I stood there, I know where that is. If you get a chance, look up original Star Trek blueprints and look at the overall thing, and then look at the neutral zone. There's a graphic when you come in the front door that shows an overlay of what this looks like. Look at them side by side. It's the same, except for those two differences we talked about. But you'll know where somebody's standing. When you see somebody in a corridor, you'll know what part of the hallway they were in.
Ropes and pulleys and some poor guy like Dan waiting for a cue to open the door. And if you've ever seen the blooper reels, you know if the doors didn't open, you'd come away with a bloody nose or a black eye.
And Chris Doohan was here last month with us and told the story that his dad would come home with a busted nose sometimes because the doors weren't opened in time for him.
Exactly. So, do we have any big Star Trek fans here?
No.
Come on up, sir. Are you guys together?
Yeah, she can do it.
No. Come on up. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen, I promise. No tribbles are going to come out. Nothing's going to happen. Are you okay? Do you want a chair?
That chair is pretty low.
Going to ask you if you wouldn't mind, we'll just move the chair. If you want to stay seated, you can stay seated. You sure?
Yep.
Okay, so, do me a favor, come right up here in the center of the door. What's your name?
Jerry.
Jerry? Okay. Will everybody get behind as close to Jerry as possible so you can see when the door's open? You've already seen a lot of this.
Yeah.
I want you up there.
Okay.
I want you up there. If you use the bathroom, I get to say what happens.
You get to pick on me the rest
Everybody
of the
who can, let's move up right here. You can come right in here, that's okay. right back there. Okay? So Jerry, in Star Trek Continues, the director would give somebody like Dan a cue. And it was very complicated in Continues, so you'd have to say doors. So Jerry, when you're ready, you're gonna give the cue to Dan.
Doors.
Ooh.
Just walk all the way in, everybody.
I like the sound.
Hey everybody, welcome to engineering. So you hear a little ambient sound in the background. That wouldn't play while we were filming. We just wanted to make you think you were in space. In reality, this is Hollywood, so I can't beam you home. I can't go to warp. But for any of those of you who are having issues at home, when we get to the transporter room, for 20 bucks, I can make your husband disappear. One of the first things that people, or the first impression people get is it's smaller than you imagined it would be. Well, it is built to scale, and when we get to the other side, we're going to talk about how we figure out how to calculate what that scale is. What is different is that that wall behind you guys would not have been there. That's a dividing wall between us and the other side of the building. We're taking over that side of the building. There was a company back there that manufactured egg rolls. And right now they're cleaning out tons and tons of egg roll grease. But we are going to move on that side. We have some plans for it. So please, keep an eye out on our social media or on Facebook. But that wall would not have been there. What do you think would have been in that location without the wall? Cameras. Director. Actors waiting to get on stage. Your writer. Your script supervisor. All those people would be back there. And if you think about it, if you're filming this room, you can't film the entire room if you're standing in it. So you want to be outside the room. So that's why that wall would not have been there. When you're trying, well, actually, I'm going to go right to the warp core. So probably the first thing that catches your eye when you walk in is the warp core. And the warp core is built exactly the same way and exactly the same size as it was in the original series. It's built through a process called force perspective. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it just means that as items go further and further back, they get smaller and smaller. They angle together at the back, and it gives the illusion of depth.
We already seen it.
So from behind, do I know you?
I'm with the city of Kingsland. I do marketing.
You?
I'm with the city of Kingsland.
Nova? I'm ready.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course.
I wasn't sure if I missed you because
No,
I thought you were going to be here.
I
That's okay. That's fine. Good. Can you stay with us for a bit?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I'm gonna tell people who you are, but She actually is here from the Kingsland Visitors Bureau, and we're planning an event for really about a year from now. But she's going to take some pictures that they can post on the Kingsland site. It's Kingsland, right? You're with Kingsland? Okay, just making sure. So we will. Her name is Nova. She belongs here. So, you know, we talked about the warp core. If you're trying to recreate a set, especially one that's over 50 years old, it's helpful if there are things that are still manufactured today that, you know, you can reuse. One of the things that's still manufactured is this hexagonal mesh, and it's steel and it's heavy, and we know it's exactly what they use because we've seen close-ups from the original series, and we know there's these little indents and the size of each one of these designs. But the question is, what is it? Steel, and not to have you all guess, it's actually a form of rebar. It goes into large cement pours to keep the cement from cracking when it cures. So if you're driving down a highway and you see a large pylon holding up another roadway, odds are there's this or something just like this inside to keep that sturdy. And this is still available today, which makes it very helpful. Next thing to look at is the ceiling. So let me tell you that there are probably about 2 or 3 other engineering rooms, engineering sets built elsewhere. This is the only one that's 2 stories high. This is about what you would have seen had you been in the original series. And again, not only is it built to scale, but it's built to look exactly like what you would have seen back then. Now, when they came up with the idea, because they had the height of building the ceiling, they started building one of the arches just down on the floor. And they were building it out of conventional material, 2x4s, plywood, glue on. And when they were done, it was over 70 pounds. So multiply that times 5, put all those boards in between, and the roof or the ceiling would have been so heavy. How do you get it safely up the ceiling? How do you secure it to the ceiling? And if it ever fell, the people here would be gone. So it didn't look like they were going to be able to do it, but you know, we talked about the fact that all these volunteers had come here to build. And one of the volunteers, who was local, said he thought he knew of someone in Jacksonville who, if you could create an image, a 3D CAD image on a PC, he could cut it exactly how you design it in whatever size you want out of styrofoam. So that ceiling is styrofoam. If that ceiling were to come down, we could carry it out of here together. It's just that way. It's just that way. So quickly he became known as Mr. Foam Man. And they said, okay, if he can make that out of foam, what else could he make out of foam? All of these items that you see up on the wall, all of these items. Snakey had everything he made out of styrofoam. And all they did was take screen caps from the original series, design a 3D CAD model, and print them in whatever sizes they wanted. Now, these things are called plantons, and I'll explain in a second why they're called that. But 3D CAD programs and PCs are great for the 21st century, but that technology didn't exist 50 years ago. So what did they do? Well, back then, when Paramount finished filming for the day, the Star Trek production people would go around the entire sets and go dumpster diving. And they would look for things that look different, look cool, that they could paint, plant them on a wall, plantons, plant them on a wall, and have people watching television think they were looking at the future. Because remember, think about it, in the 50s and 60s, what were television shows? Westerns, right? Plenty of horses, plenty of cowboys, police shows, right? Sitcoms, Leave It to Beaver, right? My Little Margie. I hate to say that I know that, but I know that. So this was something that was really innovative and different. Many people think Star Trek was canceled because it wasn't popular. Star Trek was canceled because it cost too much to make an episode. I think it was like $100,000 an episode back then. And Lucille Ball, when she was in charge of Desilu, wanted something different on television. She already had like the Dick Van Dyke Show, exactly, Andy Griffith, but she wanted something different. She picked two shows. One was Star Trek, the other one was Mission Impossible. And her staff came to her and said, Lucy, don't do Star Trek because it'll bankrupt your company. And 3 years later, Desilu went bankrupt and Star Trek was canceled. And that's why it was canceled. That's why.
I'll take a minute.
Okay.
See you in a sec.
Thanks. Yep. So just a couple of other things in here. You can stay right where you are, don't move. But you can see the ladder here. One of the things we ask is please don't climb anything. Okay. But this is solid steel, those are steel, so they are climbable. There's a gentleman who designed it, who did a lot of the design work for this studio. In fact, he actually designed this entire room. And his name is Will Smith. It's not the Will Smith that will smack you across the face at an award ceremony, but a different Will Smith. So Will scoped this whole room out, and he designed the ladder and the railings up at the top. And they found a welder who they sent the design to, and the welder did it. He came up with a flatbed, and it took a lot of people to bring it in and set it up, and everybody's patting themselves on the back for a job well done. And Will steps back and says, it's not right. A couple of things that were wrong is you can see this is a rounded edge. This was a square edge, but the feet were in the right positions. And so they told the welder he's going to have to rebuild it. And of course, you know how well that went. And he begrudgingly went, he redid it to the scale and the design they wanted. He came with his flatbed, dumped it outside, drove away. Nobody's ever heard from him again. I guess I can't blame him. But the original ladder is actually right around the corner behind the set. So if any of you have a pool with a very deep end and would like to make a deal on a ladder, I can do that with you. By the way, you know, we started talking about these plantons. And just one thing to add, nobody knows what these things are anymore. I mean, they came out of the garbage, right? So like there are those boxes up there with circles in them, light bulbs, Christmas ornaments, who really knows? The one thing that I know it was, and some of you are going to know exactly what it is when I tell you, these two gray pieces up here, which are now printed. Anybody have any idea what they might have been 55 years ago?
Anvil case?
Hmm?
Was it an anvil case?
A what case?
An anvil case for paper equipment?
No.
Okay.
No, but you were close. That's why I came over. You were close. Anybody?
Fuses.
Hmm?
Fuses.
I didn't hear.
Fuses.
No. Okay, so some of you are going to know what this was. It was packing material used inside a box that carried an IBM selector typewriter. It's just styrofoam packing material, just like when you buy a TV now and you pull that styrofoam out that's holding it in the box. That's what that was. You paint it, you put some letters and numbers on it, now you have the future. So the last thing to talk about in here is the island here in the center. And we believe that this was an afterthought on the part of the production people, because if you go back and you look at the very early episodes of Star Trek, engineering is wide open. This did not exist. So we think that they put this in to make it look like it was in some way working in conjunction with the warp core. So this became the dilithium chamber. And the crystal, and unfortunately someone played with this, so the crystal fell out. But this is where the dilithium chamber would be. Yeah. We're trying to retrieve it. It's in here. And bring it back to what it is. But this is where the crystal would have been. And then to finish the illusion that it's the future, they got these spheres. Now, you recognize them, right? It's garden decoration. Now, I found these because the heat and humidity of the summer takes its toll on items and painted or whatever. But what Continues used, and what the original series used was this painted bright gold. This one, everybody happens to be Minions. Minions. The problem with these, back in the original series, was William Shatner. Because Shatner would come into engineering to film, and he'd start kicking these around like they were soccer balls. And they tried to explain that it was a set, but they had to repaint them and put them back in place. Now, for you Star Trek aficionados, and we talked about the fact that they were always trying to save money, they would repurpose a lot of things. So, like, for example, there's a piece of the Romulan cloaking device that became the head of Nomad, or vice versa. They would just reuse things. Anybody have any idea what this might have been repurposed into?
It holds a brain.
The silicon.
The silicone.
Silicon nodules.
Yeah.
Silicon nodules.
Her babies.
The babies, the eggs. The eggs. So all they did was take a bunch of rubber balls, paint them, stick them up in a corner, then make a plaster cast or two, and then take the cast and break it to make it look like the miners were breaking in.
Yeah.
And you have an episode.
It's a really good episode.
Any questions on engineering? By the way, take as many pictures as you like, take videos. If you post them on social, just tag us, Pound Neutral Zone Studios. Please make your friends and family angry that they weren't here with you today. We good? Let's go to the other side.
Well, that's like there's an original series episode where Jim beams in and he runs out of the transporter room and then he runs to the right. And I'm like, he must have really had to go to the bathroom. Because that's where the bathroom is.
That's where our bathroom
Every time I see that episode, I'm like, Captain Kirk had to really use the power.
I did hear a funny story that I just read recently about, remember Frank Gorshin and Beale?
Let that be your last
Let that be your last battlefield. Some scene where evidently at one point they were filming with two cameras and they ran into each other in the Kirk corridor or something like that. I thought, how funny is that? Because the ship looked giant then. That's one of the ones where they really changed a lot of things in the corridors because those guys ran through stuff 3 or 4 times. And you see them go past the same thing, but there's something different on the wall. Because they just take it off and move it. Just stick it over here.
Let me just real quick. Anybody have any other questions? Before we kind of let you loose, and you are free to sit in the captain's chair, take any videos or pictures you like. I have over here at this table our entire series on Blu-ray and DVD. And if you've seen it on YouTube, I'm glad, but it looks 1,000 times better on Blu-ray and DVD. Plus they have bonus features and behind the scenes and bloopers and stuff. We have a limited supply of those, and we don't sell anything. I need to make that clear. We're not allowed to sell Star Trek. So nothing is for sale. However, we do take donations. So if you'd like to donate and get a free set of Blu-rays or DVDs signed, we've got those. Also, please be generous and donate to the Neutral Zone. The reason that you were able to take this tour today was because people before you donated just to help keep the electric bill paid, to keep the guy that owns the building rent covered every month. Their hard cost was keeping this up. when something breaks or something needs to be repainted or anything, any number of things. There's cost involved. So the people that own it now, Ray and the neutral zone, they just want to keep it standing for people to enjoy for a long time to come. And the only way that happens is the generosity of the people that get to come through and enjoy it. So please be generous. I'm going to go sit at that table for just a couple of minutes before I go to the next tour, but...
Has any of Gene Roddenberry's family been through it?
Sorry?
Has any of Gene
Oh my goodness, Rod Roddenberry sat right there.
Oh, that's
Rod
nice.
Roddenberry came down and played a little cameo, and he has been very outspoken about our series. He was like, man, if my dad were alive today, he would consider Star Trek Continues canon.
That's cool.
And everybody know the name B. Joe Trimble?
Yeah.
Letter writing campaign to save Star Trek. She's been here. Judy Burns, who wrote the Tholian Web and then also wrote a sequel for Vic, where he was old. Same author wrote that sequel. She's been here.
Does he know what you said about him being old?
I may have said it
What?
to his face.
You said what?
I had to yell really loudly though.
Old
What
Vic
about
is
you?
in the other universe, so he isn't here.
Ray said that's just you without makeup.
I know, that's his new favorite joke. Yeah, that's me without
Luckily,
makeup.
everybody only hears it once, except for us. Hey guys, thank y'all very much. I hope y'all enjoyed.